Not too long ago, the battle was waged against dietary fat and its supposed cause of the world's ongoing obesity epidemic. Many foods today advertise low-fat or fat-free alternatives, appealing to the belief that fat makes you fat. Of course, around here, we can't just accept this to be true without proper evidence. That being said, let's find out. There's no doubt that out of the three primary macronutrients we consume, carbs, fats, and protein, fat is indeed the easiest to be stored as actual fat. The fat we eat are in the form of triglycerides, which is essentially identical to the fat we store in our bodies. It doesn't take too much effort to process dietary fat into our adipose tissue. Carbs and protein, on the other hand, have other priorities. Carbs are first used to produce energy and replete glycogen stores before being stored as fat. Proteins are used for protein synthesis and a slew of other metabolic purposes. It will hardly be used for producing energy, let alone broken down for fat storage. Dietary fat is also the most calorically dense macronutrient, clocking in at 9 calories per gram compared to 4 per gram for either carbs or protein. On the surface, it does seem like eating fat might actually translate to more fat stored in our bodies. However, we have to consider the bigger perspective. Yes, our body prioritizes carbs and protein for other metabolic purposes other than fat storage, but eating these in excess will prevent our body from metabolizing dietary fat for energy. It's not the fat per se that is the issue, but rather excessive caloric consumption above our energy needs. In short, if we eat too many carbs and protein, then we won't use fat for energy, thus it will be stored. But let's take a look at what the research shows. Let's first start with a 2017 meta-analysis, which thoroughly analyzed 32 control feeding studies comparing low-fat and low-carb diets. In their findings, low-fat diets had a slight 16 grams per day fat loss advantage, or about an extra pound of fat loss per month over low-carb, high-fat diets. Now, before you think this proves that eating fat indeed makes you fatter, consider that controlled studies like these are special scenarios. In real-life scenarios, we don't have researchers bringing us meals in a controlled environment to ensure adherence. Low-carb, high-fat diets might actually have an advantage, since restricting carbs means restricting practically all junk food loaded with added sugars, plus a natural increase in protein intake. To get a better feel for more lifelike situations, we can look at a study released early last year, which I've also detailed in another video. In this study, subjects were simply instructed to adhere as closely as possible to either a low-carb or low-fat diet with a focus of weight loss through the course of 12 months. A lot of potential variations can exist, just as it would in real life. In the end, the researchers concluded that, while accounting for genotypical and insulin differences, there were no significant differences in weight change between a healthy low-fat diet versus a healthy low-carb diet, aka both achieved the same weight loss results. With all this in mind now, let's ask again, does eating fat make you fat? In terms of total calorie consumption, then yeah, sure, consuming more fat with excess consumption of any sort can make you fat. Keyword though is excess consumption, aka more calories consumed than you burn. But if you're not overeating, then having a higher proportion of your dietary intake as fat isn't going to make much of a difference to your waistline. The only macronutrient that should be of priority is protein. It's the building block of so many metabolic processes, is very unlikely to be stored away as fat, and as you bros know, the main ingredient to building muscle. Sure, you still don't want excess protein, but protein certainly should not be restricted heavily if you're healthy. Now to close, the biggest take-home message from this video is to stop tripping about eating less fat or even less carbs. What matters most is adherence. Choose a diet that you can stick to and allows you to comfortably avoid eating in excess. Again, keyword is excess. Anyway, let me know what you think about eating too much fat. How does it impact you and your goals?